March the 15th, 44 years before Christ, Julius Caesar, dictator of Rome, conqueror of Gaul, the most powerful man in the known world, rose from his bed for the last time. He had been warned not to go. His wife had wept through the night. A soothsayer had told him weeks earlier to beware the days leading to this very date. Caesar dismissed every warning. He had survived civil war, assassination plots, and a decade of brutal conquest. He was untouchable, or so he believed. To understand why 60 men wanted Caesar dead, you first must understand what he had become. Born in 100 BC into the noble Iulian family, Caesar rose through Roman politics with a ruthlessness that stunned even his enemies. He spent 8 years conquering Gaul, building a private army of battle-hardened veterans who were personally loyal to him and him alone. When the Senate ordered him to disband that army and return to Rome as a civilian, Caesar did the unthinkable. On January the 10th, 49 BC, he crossed the Rubicon River, the boundary no Roman general was permitted to cross with troops. It was an act of open war against the Republic. And Caesar won. After defeating all opposition, Caesar returned to Rome as its undisputed master. He reformed the calendar, the Julian calendar we still use today. He redistributed land to his veterans. He expanded the Senate. He reshaped Rome entirely in his own image. And then, in early 44 BC, he was declared dictator, perpetuo, dictator in perpetuity. No time limit, no conditions, no end. For a republic built on the principle that no single man should hold absolute power. This was an unforgivable act, and 60 senators began meeting in secret. The conspiracy had been forming since the summer of 45 BC. At its heart were Marcus, Junius, Brutus, and Gaius Cassius Longinus. Both men Caesar had personally pardoned after defeating them in battle. Both men he had promoted and trusted. Brutus was a philosopher, deeply admired, who believed he was saving the Republic. Cassius was a soldier with personal grievances against Caesar. One of the most critical recruits was Decimus. Junius Brutus, a man so trusted by Caesar that he had dined at his table the very night before. The night before the Ides of March, Caesar dined with Decimus. As they drank wine together, the conversation turned to what was the best kind of death. Caesar replied, one that was sudden and unexpected. Later that night, his wife Calpurnia woke screaming. She had dreamed of Caesar's body bleeding. The priests were consulted at dawn. The omens were catastrophically unfavorable. Calpurnia fell to her knees and begged Caesar not to go. For a moment, history held its breath. Caesar was considering staying home, but then a knock came at the door. It was Decimus. Decimus told Caesar that the senators were already waiting, that staying home would only embarrass himself, that the omens meant nothing. Caesar allowed himself to be talked into it. He climbed into his litter and was carried through the streets toward the theater of Pompey. He was 55 years old. He had perhaps 2 hours left to live. Caesar arrived at the Curia of Pompey, the Senate house built within the theater of Pompey, just after midday on the 15th of March. As he stepped from his litter, a man pressed a note into his hand, a note containing the names of the conspirators and a warning of exactly what was about to happen. Caesar took the note. He did not read it. He held it in his hand as he walked through the doors, unread, into the room where 60 men were waiting to kill him. Even in those final moments, the warnings kept coming. A soothsayer named Spurina, who had warned Caesar weeks earlier to beware the period, ending on the Ides of March, stood in the crowd outside the Senate. Caesar caught his eye and called out, almost mockingly, "The Ides of March have come, Spurina." The soothsayer replied, "Aye, Caesar, but they are not yet gone." Caesar laughed. He walked inside. The plan was executed with cold precision. As Caesar took his seat, a senator named Lucius Tillius Cimber approached him with a petition, a request to recall his exiled brother. Caesar had denied the request before. As Cimber began pressing the matter, grabbing at Caesar's toga, with both hands, Caesar said, "This is violence." In that moment, Casca, standing directly behind Caesar, drew the first dagger and drove it into his neck. The wound was shallow. Caesar grabbed Casca's arm. He looked around the room, and then every senator in the conspiracy rose at once. 23 men stabbed Caesar, not simultaneously, one by one. Each conspirator drove his blade in once, so that every man shared equal responsibility for what they were doing. Later, the physician who examined Caesar's body concluded that of the 23 wounds, only one had been fatal, a single thrust to the chest. In the chaos, several conspirators accidentally stabbed each other. One senator, in his panic, drove his dagger into the man in front of him, rather than Caesar. The great dictator of Rome, the man who had crossed the Rubicon, conquered Gaul, defeated Pompey, was being killed in a scene of frantic, terrified confusion. Caesar did not rage. He did not beg. As the blows continued and his strength left him, Julius Caesar pulled his toga up over his face so that he would not be seen, dying undignified. He fell at the base of the statue of Pompey, his great rival, the man he had defeated in civil war, whose theater now served as the unlikely stage for his death. The famous last words, "Et to brute," were invented by Shakespeare. 1,500 years later, Caesar said nothing. He covered his face, and Rome fell silent. The conspirators ran out of the Senate waving their daggers, shouting that Rome was free, that the tyrant was dead, that the Republic was restored. They expected to be greeted as heroes. Instead, the streets of Rome fell completely silent. The people of Rome had loved Caesar. He had fed them, entertained them, given land to their sons. Marcus Brutus had prepared a speech celebrating the Republic's restoration. He gave it to a silent crowd. The liberators, as they called themselves, retreated to the Capitoline Hill, and Mark Antony, Caesar's most powerful ally, looked at the body of the man who had been his general and began planning his revenge. The Ides of March had passed, but for the city of Rome, the true nightmare was only beginning. In the heart of the Forum, Mark Antony stood over the shrouded body of Julius Caesar, the air thick with the scent of blood and tension. As he read Caesar's final will to the gathered thousands, the crowd's confusion turned into a burning, uncontrollable fury. Grief transformed into chaos. As night fell, the Roman people began to dismantle their own city to honor their fallen leader. They built a massive funeral pyre, casting their own clothing and most prized possessions into the rising flames. In that fire, the old republic began to burn. They believed Caesar was a god, and soon all of Rome would agree. But with the fire came retribution. The men who had held the daggers realized they had no place left to hide. Roman legions, loyal to Caesar's memory, hunted the conspirators through the shadows of every province. Within 3 years, every single one of them was dead. The republic they sought to save was vanishing into the dark. From the ashes of the old world rose a new leader. Octavian, Caesar's young heir, claimed the legacy of his father. Wearing the laurel crown, he did not just lead Rome. He transformed it into an empire that would dominate the world. The first emperor was born from the blood of the last dictator. The dream of the republic was finally silenced. Decades later, Augustus walled up the very Senate chamber where Caesar had been struck down. The statue of Pompey remained, a silent witness to the spot where the stone was once stained red. The hall was never used again. It became a tomb for the ideals that Rome had outgrown. Every empire was once dust. Every crown eventually returns to it. Power is a fleeting ghost in the halls of history. Join us as we uncover the stories of those who dared to rule and the fate that awaited them. Subscribe to Dust and Crowns for new episodes every week. History remembers the victors, but the dust claims us all.